What's going on, everybody? Dots Gaming here, and today I'm bringing you guys my brand new Magicka Dragonknight PvP build for the Elder Scrolls Online Flames of Ambition patch. This video is going to go over my setup for both Battlegrounds and for Cyrodiil, since they're quite different. You know, BGs have proc sets enabled and Cyrodiil does not. Therefore, the metas in both instances are pretty different. So today's video will go over both setups and showcase them in complete detail. The only really difference between what I use in one or the other is the gear obviously changes greatly, and then there's one skill change, but otherwise in terms of consumables, Mundus, potions, all that stuff, it's pretty much the same. It's just a gear and one skill change. But I've been having a great time on my MagDK this patch. This is probably going to actually be like the only build I put up on YouTube. The rest of my builds are updated on my website, dotsgaming.com, if you want to check them out. But for YouTube, I'll pretty much only be doing the MagDK since it's honestly all I've really been playing on my stream. It's been an absolute blast to play, and it's been what I've been getting asked about a lot. So I figured it'd be great to make a video and update everyone on what I'm doing. And if you do want to see gameplay of this build being played out, you can feel free to check out my stream, link in the description below. I have countless hours of this build being played on my stream, so you can go feel free to look through the VODs or watch me when I'm live. This build has been an absolute blast to play, and I've been having a great time with it, and it feels very, very powerful. Now, as I always say with all my builds, it's just what I like, what I use, and what works for me. If you want to run something else in your DK, feel free to go ahead and do so. This is me just showcasing what I have found success with. Now, we're going to start with the Battlegrounds gear set up first. That's what we're going to start with. And our first set is going to be 2 pieces of Zons. Now, Zons gives you a line of spell critical, and when you deal, which is kind of useless for us, but when you deal damage to a nearby enemy with a light or heavy attack, you have a 33% chance to create a beam of fire to connect you to your enemy, dealing about 2,400 flame damage every second for 6 seconds, and every second, this damage is increased by 100%, but the beam will break if the enemy moves 8 meters away from you. Now, this set right now hits hard as a truck. I used to be a big hater on Zons because it just, the cooldown's kind of high. The effect can be purged off. I was never really that big of a fan of it, but it just deals so much damage right now. Like, it is such an oppressive set. And with the way that I have my Battlegrounds build all set up, all of my proc sets that I run are like dot proc sets. So between all of the dots that we have in the build, plus all of the proc sets that we have, you can just watch someone's health bar very quickly deplete. And this plays perfectly into the strategy that we are going for. So it's a very, very, very strong set. If you don't like this, you could always run Grothdar, but I found this stronger without Elfbane, so that has been what I've been using. Our main 5-piece on the build is going to be Oblivion's Foe. Now, this gives us a line of spell damage, weapon damage, penetration, weapon critical, which is kind of useless, another line of weapon and spell damage, and when you deal damage with soul magic, you mark the target soul, dealing another 14.6k magic damage over 10 seconds. So basically, whenever we use Soul Splitting Trap on a group of enemies, they also get this additional dot from Oblivion's Foe. So the amount of dot damage they're taking from just this gear set plus Soul Splitting Trap alone is incredibly high. So we're able to just cleave down a massive groups of enemies, because when there's like a big ball fight in a BG, you could just chuck up Soul Splitting Trap and you've put Oblivion's Foe on everybody in range of the target that has Soul Splitting Trap on it. It's insane. It deals so much damage. Really great set, and I've been enjoying it a lot. Now, our other proc set on the build is going to be the Vaetran Destro. So casting weakness to elements, or in this case we use Ellie Drain, on a target within 15 meters also causes you to connect a surge of elemental energy between you two for 10 seconds. And while this tether persists, they take about 2,400 flame, frost, and shock damage every second, which increases by 1% every time it deals damage, up to 20%. And this could occur once every 10 seconds. So it's just another beam-like effect that deals a lot of damage that ramps up over time. And of course, we connect all of this together with the set that makes it all possible, Malakath. So being that proc sets cannot crit, for those of you who don't know, Malakath is just the perfect setup to add into this mix, especially if you can take into account that we are in heavy armor. Our critical chance is pretty bad, so we don't really care about not being able to deal critical damage. And like I said, because we wear 3 proc sets, they can't crit to begin with. We don't care about our offensive critical chance. So we are able to run this to increase all of our proc set damage by 25%. And I don't think this has changed, but Malakath has not been put into the tooltips. I don't think that's changed. So you can imagine how much damage it's going to deal once it actually gets boosted up by Malakath. Plus, we have Malakath boosting up the rest of our dots and the rest of our skills. So it's just insane. There's nothing else to say about it. It's a really, really good ring, and it just makes this build even stronger. Now, on our back bar, we actually run endurance. So I run endurance, 2 pieces of endurance on the jewelry, and then we run a 1 endurance weapon on the back bar because health recovery is extremely strong as a defensive mechanic for Dragonknight. Now, the reason it is so strong is because we are getting a boost to our health recovery from Constitution in heavy armor, and we are also getting a boost to our health recovery from the Draconic Power skill line, one of our passives, which is Elder Dragon, gives us an additional 5% health recovery for each Draconic Power ability slotted, and we have 3 on that back bar. So in addition to gaining the 20% health recovery from our Constitution, we're getting another 15% from Draconic Power. We have the health recovery from Endurance, plus we want to be rich Sugar Skulls for more health recovery. And when we are all buffed up in the BG's build, we're going to be sitting at about 2,800 health recovery, which is incredibly good, and that's going to only go up with our battlegrounds, with our Cyrodiil build, which I will cover in a second. Now, you might be wondering, well, Dots, if you're running 2 endurance on the jewelry and 1 on the weapon, what is your shield? No, I am not running trainee. I know you could fit trainee here, but I don't like to run trainee because you would get a line of health, and I don't like having different HPs from my front to back bar. It's just a personal thing that I just really dislike, because if you swap to your back bar when your health is low, you will be increasing the amount of damage you take from executes. So I don't like that. So huge thanks to somebody on my stream for tipping me off to this shield. I did not even know that existed. It is called the Grievous Leeching Ward, and you probably heard Lord Warden screaming at me while I've been doing this build video, but this is a unique quest reward from the quest from Imperial City Prison. You can do this on normal if you want to, and this unique shield has a health recovery enchant on it, which is really, really awesome because it plays into the defensive strategy of this build really, really well, and you normally can't enchant shields with health recovery. So it's a really cool, unique enchant that you can get on the shield, which is super awesome. Because if you compare this to, let's say, a shield with 868 maximum magicka, that shield will maybe increase your coag tooltip by like 100. Who cares? You know, while this is giving you 170 health recovery, doesn't require a skill to be used. It's just active at all times and is going to be then further amplified by Major Fortitude, by our Draconic Power passives, by Constitution. So we just get so much more return from this enchant that it's much better to run this unique shield on the back bar than run some like random dead shield that just gives you magicka. So this is going to be better. So definitely recommend picking this up from a quest. Now, our Cyrodiil build is a bit different. Our Cyrodiil build is instead going to be 5 heavy Julianos. Again, with no proc sets, so it's going to look very different. But I have been loving heavy Julie. 2 lines of spell crit, a line of maximum magicka, and then about 300 spell damage. Heavy Julie is freaking awesome. It's one of the very few offensive gear sets that you can wear in heavy armor, and I've been a big fan of heavy armor this patch. So heavy Julie, I've been having a great time with it. Honestly, it feels really, really strong. I know some people don't like Julianos, but I have found it to be very, very effective. Tried out a couple different gear sets, and honestly, I kind of find myself coming back to this one quite a bit. And then plus, one of the good things about it is that, yeah, while our spell crit on the front bar is pretty bad, on our back bar, we have about 30% spell crit because I also run Flames of Oblivion on my back bar, so I get Major Prophecy there. But that gives us a really solid chance for a crit on Coag to make our defense much, much stronger. So I do like Julianos. Again, I know some people don't, but I've been having really, really good success with it, and I've been enjoying it quite a bit. Now, in terms of our other 5 piece that we're running on our front bar only, we are running Spinners for 2 lines of maximum magicka, a line of spell damage, and a whopping 3,400 spell penetration. It just sends our damage through the roof. It's a really, really good set. Especially for this, for this current meta, a lot of people have been stacking quite a bit of defense in Cyrodiil. So being able to just penetrate through a lot of that will help you close out a lot of kills that you would not have been able to get otherwise. And then besides the Cyrodiil besides Spinners and Julianos, I'm doing the exact same thing with the Endurance jewelry. And then we also have our Endurance axe and then the Grievous Leeching Ward shield on the back bar. So that pretty much has stayed the same. Now, in terms of our enchants and everything for both builds, because they're basically the same with one exception, I run triple prismatic glyphs I run a reinforced chest piece, and then I do 2 impen and 4 sturdy on the body. On our jewelry, I do triple arcane across the board. Now for BGs, I do 2 spell damage and 1 magicka recovery. But for Cyrodiil, I do spell damage across the board. Okay, because I don't find myself needing the extra recovery in Cyrodiil, but since you lose some of your CP when you go into BGs and I get recovery from my CP, I'd like to pick it up a little bit extra off of the Malakath band. So basically, when I swap off the Malakath band and go into the Cyrodiil setup, you see I'm just triple spell damage across the board. And then on our front bar, we're using a charged flame enchant. Now, I always get this question with all my builds. Dots, why do you use charged? Because of the combustion effect here. When you apply burning to an enemy, you restore 500 magicka. So every single time that you deal damage with a fire attack, it doesn't matter what is, if it's a fire attack dealing damage for proccing combustion. So if you are increasing your chance greatly to proc combustion with something like charged, you're going to get a lot of magicka return, especially as you fight more and more people. You'll be proccing burning much more frequently. Burning is also a nice dot, so just really, really good for your front bar for sustain, and I run that with a flame damage enchant. Back bar, I go with a powered one-handed weapon. You could do either reinforced or sturdy back here. Depends if you want a little bit more resistance or if you want more block mitigation. I might transmute this to sturdy. I'm just working on getting up my transmute stones. And then back bar, it's up to you. You can either run a weapon damage enchant, or you can run drain magicka poisons, or you can run drain stamina. You can run whatever you want. Back bar doesn't really matter all too much, but that is going to be pretty much up to you. Now, in terms of our skills, we are running, of course, Flame Lash. I'm a huge believer in Flame Lash. It's extremely good. Don't really like Multi-Whip as much. For those of you who don't know, Flame Lash deals flame damage to an enemy, and if you strike an enemy that's immobilized, stunned, you set them off balance, and then when you target them, when they are off balance, you lash them at half cost to deal more damage and then heal yourself for a huge amount. Now, the thing that's great about this is it allows you to basically play like a brawler. You're able to just completely brawl it out with people. Your offense then becomes your defense with you healing yourself, and it just fits a heavy armor MagDK, in my opinion, very, very well. I'm not that big of a fan of Molten Whip. I've used it like one patch, like back in Scalebreaker when damage was through the roof, and people were, you know, stacking dots all over the place, and because you used a resto staff back then to counteract all the dots, and so I used Molten Whip at that build because it was squishy and used Mist Form, but that's a whole other discussion. But right now, I just believe that for the MagDK playstyle, I personally think Flame Lash is a bit better. If you want to run Molten Whip, might want to try to maybe do a different build, but for me, and the way that I like to play the DK, the Flame Lash just fits the playstyle perfectly. Burning Embers is also another great one. Applies a flame damage dot over time. Damage over time. Anyway, it's a dot that heals you, and it also will automatically apply the burning status effect, effectively lowering the cost by 500. So it's just it's a good dot to add into your arsenal because this build is very dot focused. So it's one of our go-to damage over time skills. We also use Fossilize as our primary CC. You stun them, cannot be blocked or dodged, and when the stun ends, they take damage and are immobilized for 3 seconds, essentially making a double stamina burn, which ever since the CP changes is really, really effective to just drain the stamina from your opponent quicker. We also do run Elemental Drain. This will proc our Vatran Destro staff, but even without that, it's still amazing because it grants us about 6,000 pen and about 340 effective magical recovery for free. It's why I've always run an Inferno staff on my MagDK for the longest time. I haven't run Sword and Board on the front bar in quite a while, just because this skill is insanely good. Plus, you know, you have the flame light attacks, which are also great as well. But it's mostly because Alley Drain. Alley Drain, for me, has just been a staple on my MagDK for a long time, and I highly recommend running it. Now, when I use my proc build, I use Soul Splitting Trap for, like I described earlier, because this will proc Oblivion's Foe. So it deals about 7.8k magic damage unbuffed, and it'll deal it to to enemies within an 8-meter radius of your target. We're basically just using this to proc Oblivion's Foe. Now, when I do not run this, when I run the Cyrodiil build, I instead use Engulfing Flames. Now, Engulfing Flames is going to be a damage conal that deals damage instantly, and then will deal another 12k over 14 seconds, and it'll also increase the damage that all of your flame attacks deal by 10%. So your Lash, Embers, Leap, everything that deals flame damage will hit 10% harder. So it's really, really good, and again, it's another dot in the arsenal. another chance to proc combustion. So it's really, really, really good skill for us. This is kind of like my flex spot depending on my build that I run. Otherwise, the rest of the skills are pretty much the same. I, of course, run Leap. Leap tooltip's going to look really bad for the proc build just because, again, most of my sets are proc sets, so the tooltip's going to look kind of shitty. But still, I love Leap. It's a really, really fun skill. Deals flame damage, stuns enemies in an area. You get a fatty shield when that happens. You also have it for relatively cheap, so it's a really, really good ultimate. It's fun, close to the gap, makes up for some of the mobility problems that the build has. So I've always liked this skill. It's part of the reason that Magicka Dragonknight is so fun to play. You got to have the DK dunk. Super, super fun. Now on that back bar, we are going to be running Degeneration. This is going to proc our major sorcery, supply another dot to the build, and give us our Mages Guild passives. We also run Flames of Oblivion. Now, Flames of Oblivion is effectively another dot on the build, and it also gives us Major Prophecy on our back bar, increasing our spell critical, and this will scale with our highest offensive stat as well. And this launches a fireball at 2 enemies, so it's essentially whenever it procs every 5 seconds, it will deal instantaneous damage. It's effectively like a dot to 2 enemies that are around you. Now, I've had people ask me, like, why don't you run Cauterize? I have personally found Cauterize to be really, really, really bad ever since the changes to healing back in Greymoor. The thing that made Cauterize really good was that it was a cheap costing effective heal. Like, the amount of healing you got for how much it costed, like, that ratio was really, really nice. But now, ever since they changed healing, at least for MagDK, Cauterize is a cheap heal that also doesn't heal for that much. So that's kind of part of the reason why I went for a more health recovery strategy on my back bar now, because the health recovery makes up for the loss that I used to have with Cauterize, because now I don't have that heal anymore. So health recovery kind of makes up the difference. It is a more effective hot than Cauterize would be. And instead, because we opened up a slot, decided to go with Flames of Oblivion, and Flames of Oblivion actually chunks. Really, really good skill. Like it a lot. Definitely recommend trying it if you have not over Cauterize. It's really good. We also have Coag on the back bar as our primary heal. It's actually not a terrible button to press anymore. It's actually kind of weird. Coag heal is actually pretty respectable. The Major Fortitude's also really, really nice, being that we play a health recovery build. And yeah, not much else to say about it. It is our primary burst heal. We also run Volatile Armor. Again, another dot on the build for when we proc our armor buff. This also gives us our Major Resolve, and it returns damage back to the attacker when they deal damage to us in melee range. I do hope one day this becomes flame damage instead of magic damage, but for right now, it is what it is. I do also run Protective Plate. We run Protective Plate for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a Draconic power skill, therefore it plays into our passives to give us more health recovery. But honestly, I've actually really enjoyed this skill. I used to really hate the movement wings. I used to think it was kind of poo-poo. I still wish the immunity to snares and mobilizations was a little bit higher. But I feel that the projectile damage reduction has been very valuable this patch, especially with how many mag sorts there are. I feel like I've still been getting sniped quite a lot. So, and there's just a lot of ranged projectile damage. At least I've noticed that from playing. And Protective Plate has felt really good in reducing that damage coming in. And I actually feel that combined with my block mitigation, I really do notice when this is active on my character. So I find wings right now to be very valuable. I know some people play with the other morph of wings that deals damage too, but at least from my experiences, I don't think that's a good idea, because there's a lot of bombard spammers right now, and if you don't have a single movement skill, especially because I do play in heavy, I'd have to dodge roll to get away from that, and it's going to cost so much stam. So I prefer to go with movement wings. Very effective skill. Definitely recommend it. And then because I'm an ESO boomer, I still run Temporal Guard on my back bar for the minor protection, reducing my damage taken by an additional 5%, just making me a little bit tankier. But also this has come in handy a couple of times where I take like a really big, like unexpected smack of damage from somebody, and I'm worried about getting a leap oftentimes, so I could just temp guard instead. You could also just, jump off buildings and stuff and then temporal guard back up, and you can do a bunch of like really like unique and cool things with this. But I still like the minor protection personally. I still do. So I do recommend the alt. If you do not like it and you're like, Dots, this is 2021, I don't want to use that anymore, you can use Spell Wall instead. Spell Wall is also really, really good. Blocks all attacks at no cost and reflects all projectiles at you. And then another option is you could run the other morph of standard for shifting standard if you want like a big AoE alt with Defile as well. So that could be cool too. But your back alt is kind of up to you, but I like to run a Temporal Guard still myself. Now, in terms of our stats, this is going to be what our stats look like for the proc build. It's actually 32.9k Magicka on the front bar. It's bugged. Degen just bugs the stat pool. So it's 32.9k in the front bar and 33.5 on the back bar. We have 28.5k maximum health with 18.2k max stam with 1375 Magicka recovery front bar, 1400 on the back bar. And then again, we have 1150 health recovery on the back bar, and unbuffed we have about 2300 on the back bar. We got 29 to 31 spell damage, 22.5k spell resist with 15.5k physical resist with 24.5k spell on the back bar and 17.5k on the back bar with 2200 critical resistance. Now, when we strap on the Cyrodiil build, if my dressing room wants to actually participate, except for I'm clicking the wrong button, which is going to be why that's happening. On our front bar, we got 36.9. Lord Warden, calm down. I'm doing a build video. We got 36.9k maximum Magicka on the front bar, 28.5k health, 18.2k stam. Those stats really didn't change besides the Magicka, except for we only have 1192 Magicka recovery with 1200 on that back bar. Again, the 1151 health recovery with 2300 on the back bar. Our spell damage, though, goes up a bit to 3273 on the front bar, and on the back bar, it is 3146. We have 17.7 spell crit, 30% on the back bar with 6700 spell penetration, which is super nice. And then again, we still have 22.4k spell and 15.3k physical, with on the back bar going up to 24.4 spell, 17.3 physical, and again, that same 2200 crit resistance. We do all points into Magicka. We use the Atronach Mundus Stone, and we use the Bewitched Sugar Skulls buff food. You need to run Bewitched Sugar Skulls. You cannot run Longfin Pasty with melon sauce. You just spend the money on Bewitched Sugar Skulls. It gives 400 health recovery unbuffed. Without Bewitched Sugar Skulls, your health recovery is going to be dramatically lower. Buy this food. Like, I can't even recommend Longfin as an alternative. You need to run this. Now, in terms of your race, well, actually, let's do potions first. In terms of potions, I run Tri-Stat. That was a long explanation, but I run Tri-Stat potions. If I am not using Tri-Stats, the only thing I'll ever use is maybe I use a move pots with stealth detection in them. So, also a good option. And I have immunity to knockback, stealth detection, and restore Magicka, so I still do get my major intellect, and because I am still getting major fortitude from Coag, so if there's like a problematic Nightblade around, I'll just pop this instead of my Tri-Stat pot. Now, in terms of race, I am a big believer in the Breton. You have to basically play Breton for this build. The sustain is built around being a Breton because I make very, very few exceptions for my sustain because Breton gives so much. You're able to get 130 Magicka recovery and 7% cost reduction. The only other race I can maybe see you getting away with would be like if you ran an Imperial for the cost reduction off of that. But again, your health would be a bit higher, your stamina would be a bit higher, so you can maybe make some adjustments on enchants and stuff to squeeze out some more max Magicka since you're missing those lines of maximum Magicka. But honestly, Breton is just by far the best race for the build. Breton just handles so much of the sustain issues that Magicka Dragonknight has. With just the extra cost reduction, the extra recovery, you get bonuses to Magicka, you get extra resistance to make you tankier. Like, it just, in my opinion, is the perfect race for MagDK, and I can't possibly recommend it enough. Now, moving into champion points, I'm pretty sure that's all we have left to do. I'm not going to cover the green ones. The green ones are totally up to you. I'm going to touch mostly on my slottable CP first and then kind of show you like where you want to go after that. So in terms of slottable CP, I am only using one offensive CP, and I'm using Deadly Aim. Now, Deadly Aim increases your damage done with a single target attack by 2% per stage. Now, keep in mind, this also will affect your dots. Okay, when I was first messing with the CP, I didn't think this would affect my dots, but then as I did more research, I realized I was wrong, and it does affect your dots. So Deadly Aim will be better than Thaumaturge, because while Thaumaturge affects your dots, it doesn't affect any of the instant hits, and it doesn't buff Flame Lash. Deadly Aim will also buff the dots, but it also affects the instant hits, and it will also buff Flame Lash, which is super important since we spend a lot of time smacking Flame Lash. So Deadly Aim is just definitely going to be your strongest offensive champion point star for the build. Now, I've messed with using 2 offensive CP and 2 defensive CP, or 1 offensive and 3 defensive, and right now I've been running the 3 defensive CP, and I've been really liking it because you get a lot of bonus from the defensive CP. They're really, really strong. So we are getting 10% damage reduction from Duelist Rebuff on single target attacks, very effective against things like Sorks and against things like Nightblades. But then you also have Unassailable to give you 10% damage reduction against area of effect attacks, really good against things like Jabs, Dawnbreaker. So these two combined give you a really wide range of damage reduction. And on top of that, I've also been running Resilience for 660 crit resist, which is effectively 10% crit damage reduction. Really, really good right now, since some of the strongest classes in Cyrodiil are Nightblades and Sorks, who, again, they deal big burst damage off of crits many of the times. So having the extra crit resist is really good, and I've found it to be very useful. If you do not like Resilience, you can feel free to run Enduring Resolve instead for extra dot reduction. But I have personally found the crit resist to be a little bit better for me. I was debating maybe you're also running like Thom or Biting Aura instead of one of these defensive stars, but I feel like I pump out enough damage already, so I would rather go for the triple defensive CP and make myself much more tanky when I'm 1vxing, because my damage already feels fine. So that's currently what I've been doing. And like I said, you just get so much bonus and so much benefit out of the defensive CP stars that I've been finding them to be much more useful than like some of these offensive stars. Well, like I said, if maybe you don't want to be this defensive, you could take out Resilience, and you could put some in Thaumaturge or Biting Aura, depending on if you want to go for leap damage or if you want to just go for more dot damage overall. Now, besides that, basically the order that I kind of went in is I went Eldritch Insight, I went into here, I went full into Piercing, I then went to Deadly Aim, I then came down here, I did 10 into Quick Recovery, 40 Hardy, 40 Elemental Aegis, then I did Duelist Rebuff, Unassailable, went back in, did Resilience, also hit Blessed, and then basically the last passive star that I'm going to get, I'm going to do Tireless Discipline once I'm done with in Extended Might. I'm going to get Flawless Ritual because it's literally just more sustain. So I'll probably get Flawless Ritual, War Mage, and then I'll do Tireless Discipline, with Precision being by far the lowest priority. Now, in terms of our Red CP, I'm really happy with. I've done a bunch of testing with Red CP, and I'm really happy with the way that this feels. We go with Rejuvenation for the Tri Recovery across the board. Really good for the health recovery, because again, it plays into our defensive strategy. The Magicka Recovery is good for more sustain, and then Stamina Recovery, of course, is just always welcome. We also run Peace of Mind. I really, really like Peace of Mind. Peace of Mind gives us extra health and Magicka Recovery when we're under the effects of crowd control immunity. So oftentimes, you're going to be CC'd constantly when you're 1vxing, and then also you're going to be getting CC'd a lot with someone. If you're fighting somebody one-on-one, people are going to typically crowd control you when they're going for their damage, so you're getting like a nice boost to your health recovery when someone's trying to go offensive, and same thing to your Magicka Recovery, allowing you to use more skills and have better defense when someone's going for their offense. And it just, I think this star is just really good for my MagDK build in particular, because the extra Magicka Recovery is literally always welcome, and the health recovery plays into our strategy. I also run Juggernaut, by far the best red CP in my opinion. While you're under the effect of crowd control immunity, you take 10% less damage. Again, like I just described, you're going to be getting CC'd constantly while you 1vx, and again, if you are dueling somebody, typically people are going to go for their big burst after a crowd control. So you are basically just taking another 10% off the top from that. So we have 10% from Juggernaut, we have 10% from Unassailable, 10% from Duelist Rebuff, 10% from Resilience. So we have a lot of damage mitigation from our CP stars. So it's really, really nice. And then our final champion point is one that I think is perfect for MagDK, and it is Survival Instinct. So while you're afflicted with a status effect, your core combat skills cost 5% less per stage for a total of 25%, excuse me, cost reduction. Now this covers your block, dodge roll, sprint, bash, CC break, like that type of stuff. And so especially since my build focuses so heavily on blocking, getting 25% cost reduction when you're afflicted by a status effect, which again, when you're 1vxing, odds are you will be, is such a huge stamina sustain increase. So really, really like the star. I'm able to block for a lot longer with it, and I think it's really, really good. But the way that I kind of went about my CP here was I did pointed to Rejuvenation, and then I did whatever the minimum was for Tumbling, minimum for Mystic Tenacity. Then I grabbed Hero's Vigor for the extra health. Then I went up to Defiance, grabbed Peace of Mind and Juggernaut, went over here, grabbed Tireless Guardian, Nimble Protector, and Fortification. And then I grabbed Survival Instincts. I think I said that already. And then I've been starting to put points into other places. But that's kind of the direction I went with this. So not too bad. As long as you have some decent CP, it really won't be that hard to get. Your lowest priority, you want to just literally get the minimum in Tumbling and Mystic Tenacity so that you can get to Hero's Vigor and Survival Instincts. And then get to these 3 stars over here. And then you can put points into Tireless Guardian, grab these 2. And then once you're done with that, putting points into like Tumbling, Hasty, Sprinter, Savage Defense, Bashing Brutality, Piercing Gaze, that stuff all comes after because it's like a little bit more supplementary. What I have right now here is like the core stuff that you want to get as soon as possible. Now, by the way, with the CP, if you want to see the full list of like how I would get stuff, like the maximum order, you just go onto my website. Link for the build will be in the description below if you want a written version. So you can go feel free to take a look at the written version on my website, and that'll have the full list of CP, much more specific order. So if you just want to kind of follow that along to know exactly how I put the points in, you can go ahead and do that. Now, the rotation for Magicka Dragonknight is, I'll do small tips and tricks here. Rotation for Magicka Dragonknight is all about buff and debuff maintenance since we are basically a dot class. So basically what I do is I make sure that I maintain Volatile Armor and Flames of Oblivion at all times. I then will lead with Degeneration. I'll then go into Elemental Drain, Engulfing Flames, Burning Embers. Now, you want to make sure that you maintain these 6 buffs/debuffs at all times. It is so important for MagDK. It makes sure that your offense and defense are completely optimal. If you just try to play overly aggressive and start letting your buffs fall off, you will find yourself falling behind in a fight. It's really important to make sure you maintain these things, because outside of maintaining that stuff, your main goal is to just fossilize into Double Lash to get the Power Lashes going and just go into that Light Attack Power Lash spam using Ferocious Leap as a way to finish off your targets. Or if you're going to, let's say you're fighting a big group, I've had this happen a couple times, 1vxing, you have your dots up on everybody, you're fighting a big group, you pull them around a corner, and then you leap for crowd control. So you're leaping to crowd control that large group. You're also getting the big shield, you're getting a Battle Roar heal and restoration to your resource pools. And if you are quick enough on the draw, you can Flame Lash somebody on the Ferocious Leap stun to then get a Power Lash and basically kill that person outright. So it's a really, really good tool to use. So like if someone turns a corner, you can leap on them. Another really good way to use leap, this is a little fun fact for a 1v1. Another really good way to use leap is if you are having like a tough duel with an opponent and you notice that you're both kind of losing a little bit of health and you're both starting to kind of get whittled down, kind of like bait the guy in, like let him take some of your HP to where you're not scared that you're going to get one shot, but you're kind of like baiting him to be like, oh no, I'm losing HP. And a lot of times you will find that people will try to overcommit for a kill. And at that point you can use leap to turn the battle right on its head, because you're getting, again, the battle roll restoration and the shield. And from there you can go into a Power Lash, which will then heal you. So you will be putting out massive damage on your opponent and you will be back at basically full health. So it's a really good way to bait people in. If you notice that, both of your guys' HP are starting to get low, try to bait them in for, like I said, to make them overcommit for that kill and then smack them with a leap. Can be a bit tricky based on the class you're fighting, so keep that in mind. But basically, too, if you want to go for like a big burst of damage on someone, if you're having trouble killing them, fossilize and then leap into that just so that they can't block the leap. And then in terms of defensive play, it's honestly pretty straightforward because this build doesn't have a lot of mobility, right? So the big thing is that, again, with all of your buffs and debuffs maintained, you want to hold block and coag and basically just keep holding block and let your health recovery do its work. Flex your wings if you need to get away from people and you need to get a little bit of extra movement, or if you want to reduce damage coming in from projectiles. Let's say a Magsork is going to start dealing his burst on you. Just flex your wings. That now is cut in half, So just use the tools you have to your advantage. This build is very tanky, so even though it's not the most mobile build in the world, you can still block and get away from people with just between your health recovery and your superior tankiness. But I know this build video was very long. I did not plan for it to be 35 minutes. I could just talk about MagDK for a really long time, so I always have my MagDK build videos always tend to be a bit longer than my other ones because I literally can talk about this class for just so much time. But this build's been really fun, man. I've been having a really, really good time with it. It's really effective. And this is pretty much, I think, what I'm going to run for the rest of the patch. I've done quite a bit of testing on it, and there's really nothing I could say I want to change. I'm really happy with how it plays out, and I definitely recommend it if you guys have been looking for a setup for your Dragon Knight. But with that being said, guys, I think that's going to be it for me today. So if you guys liked this video and found it helpful, I'd appreciate if you left a like on it. If you have any questions, go ahead and feel free to leave a comment below. And guys, for more great ESO and other MMORPG content, feel free to hit that sub button as well as the bell to keep notifications on. But like I did say at the beginning of the video, and I just want to reiterate it here at the end, this is just what I like and what I've been using and what I have found success with. Everybody plays the ESO and a little bit differently. Everyone's got their own likes and dislikes and certain things that they prefer. So you can make any changes to the build that you want to suit your needs. But again, this is just what I have been finding success with myself. But I think, guys, with that, I'm going to be peacing out of this video. Thank you so much for stopping by today. I appreciate it. As always, I'm Dots Gaming, and I'll see you all in the next one.